Good morning, Kids Church. We've been looking together at Genesis this term. We've seen so far that God created everything by the power of His Word, and it was good. We've seen that God made us to rule and relate. And we've seen that people didn't listen to God, but decided they wanted to be king over themselves, to live their own way. Last week, with Kirsten, we saw how life outside the garden was bad. There was a brother killing his brother and people dying instead of living forever. Well, today we come to Genesis chapters 6 to 9 and to a story you've probably heard before and probably lots of times. I wonder if you can guess what it is. There's a lot of animals, lots of rain, a big boat and a rainbow. You guessed it, it's the story of Noah and the ark. But I need to warn you, this is not a happy part of the Bible story. Often when we hear this story told, there's lots of lovely animals and there's a boat and there's rain and a rainbow and it's all happy. But when we read about Noah and the ark in the Bible, it's not a happy story. We read about how evil people have become. We read about God's judgment. We read about how even when people are given a new beginning, they still don't listen to God. They still sin. But we also read that, like always with God, He shows mercy and He saves. All right, well, let's go. As I read from Genesis chapter 6, listen and see if you can hear what God says people are like. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all of the time. Did you hear? Every thought, only evil all of the time. It's not good, is it? That's about as evil as it gets. So what will God do? Listen. The Lord regretted that He had made human beings on the earth, and His heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. God judged the people He had made and decided to wipe them out, to wipe out the evil from the earth. Why? Because God is a holy God and He hates sin. But as always, God shows mercy and He chooses to save. Listen. But God found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Noah was not perfect. The Bible tells us that nobody's perfect. But he trusted God, and God chose to save him and his family. Listen. I am going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has a breath of life in it, everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. Noah did everything just as God had commanded him. Do you know how old Noah was when he built the ark? He was 600 years old. Listen. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds, and of all creatures that moved along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark, as God had commanded Noah. And after the 7 days, the flood waters came on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every living creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him in. Just as God had promised, the world that he had made was flooded. In God's kindness and mercy, Noah and his family, animals of every kind, were saved. Did you hear how God didn't send the rain until they were all in the ark? How he shut them in to keep them safe? But just as God promised, every living thing that moved on land perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground. And the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. Just as God promised, all living things on earth were wiped out. Just as God promised, he judged the people he had made who turned against him. Well, if we kept reading the story of Noah and the ark in Genesis 6-9, do you remember what happened next? The floodwaters dried up. Noah sent a raven and then a dove to see if it was time to come out of the ark. Then finally, when God had dried the earth, God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, and you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds and the animals, all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply in the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it." It's a new beginning, isn't it? A new start. And God makes a promise to the people. Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. And he put a rainbow in the sky as a sign of his promise. Did you hear? Never again will God destroy the earth by flood. Is it because now they've been given a new start, everything will be like all good? No. God says that people are still evil from childhood. They still sin. They still live the way they want to and treat themselves as the king instead of God. We'll see that again next week. God does not make promises because people are good, but because he is good and kind and merciful. We've seen again today that God is king. He is in control. We've seen again that people are evil. They don't treat God as the king. And we've seen again that God will judge and punish people for their sin. Do you know that after Jesus died and rose again, Peter wrote a letter to some Christians, and he mentioned the flood. He told them lots of things about how to live as one of God's people in a world where many people don't treat God as their king. One of the things he tells them is that Jesus will come back one day to judge the world, and they need to be ready by trusting in Jesus. There had been people saying that Jesus wouldn't keep his promise and he wouldn't return, and it had been so long. But listen to what Peter says. He says they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens came into being and the earth was formed out of water and by water. God made the world by the power of his word. Peter says, by these words also the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. Peter's talking about the flood, isn't he? That God sent the flood to punish evil people, and to destroy. Peter says, by the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and the destruction of the ungodly. Peter says Jesus will return one day, and there will be a fiery judgment on those who aren't trusting Jesus. So what should we do? We should know that God is the King. We should know that God is a God who keeps his promises. Be thankful that Jesus died to take the punishment that you deserve for your sin. Put your trust in Jesus. And as you do, God will help you to live as his person in his world. And when Jesus returns, there will be no need to fear, but we will be filled with joy. We're going to pray, then there'll be a song. Then it'd be a great idea if you spoke to someone in your house about what we've seen in Genesis today. Well, thanks for listening. Let's pray. Dear Father, we thank you that you are God and you are the King and you are in control of all things. We thank you that you hate evil and you hate sin and you punish it. We thank you for Jesus who died in our place to take the punishment that we deserve for our evil and our sin. Please help us to be people who trust in you and who look forward to your return. Amen. Until next time, bye.
He died upon the cross. He died upon the cross. He died upon the cross. For me, just for me. One day when I was lost, he died upon the cross. He died upon the cross. For me, just for me. They laid him in the grave. They laid him in the grave. They laid him in the grave. For me, just for me. One day when I was lost, he died upon the cross. He died upon the cross. For me, just for me. He rose up from the dead. He rose up from the dead. He rose up from the dead. For me, just for me. One day when I was lost, he died upon the cross. He died upon the cross. For me, just for me. He's coming back again. He's coming back again. He's coming back again. For me, just for me. One day when I was lost, he died upon the cross. He died upon the cross. For me, just for me.